You were never meant to be manageable. Not agreeable, not modest, not a feather in the wind of someone else's comfort. You were taught to smile instead of speak, to dim instead of disturb, to be good, not whole. But beneath the well-trained nods, the quiet corrections, and the exhaustion of holding yourself back just enough to be accepted, there's a voice you haven't forgotten, only buried. That voice doesn't speak in demands or declarations. It hums from the center of your being. It asks nothing of you but truth. It knows the rhythm of your intuition. It remembers who you were before performance became your personality. You do not need another strategy for confidence. You need a return to what is ancient in you, wild in you, uncompromising in you. The soul doesn't evolve through applause. It comes alive through self-reunion. This isn't a video about how to become strong, because you were never weak. You were just asked to forget your own language. Your power isn't something to build. It's something to uncover. From under the shame, the silence, and the stories you were handed, but never consented to carry. If this message already stirs something quiet and aching in you, if you feel the weight of something long buried begin to shift, then like this video and subscribe. Not to follow me, but to follow the pulse of your own remembering. Because this is not empowerment. This is resurrection. Not of something new, but of something timeless. There is a version of you the world forgot, and she is unforgettable. Now let's walk toward her. Together. Carl Jung didn't give us a path to power. He gave us a mirror. Not the kind you look into, but the kind that looks into you and asks if what you've been calling your life is truly your own. He said the soul doesn't want safety. It wants wholeness. It wants integration. It wants every silenced truth, every broken instinct, every piece of yourself you traded for approval, back. And for the woman waking up now, this is no longer a philosophy, it's survival. You can feel it, in the fatigue that lingers even after sleep, in the conversations that leave you emptier, not heard, in the relationships where your intuition is louder than the other person's voice, but you still override it. That ache you carry, it's not weakness, it's the call of the self, the deeper you, asking to be known. Jung called this the process of individuation, not the path of self-improvement, but of self-reunion. A woman on this path stops trying to be chosen. She starts choosing herself. Again, and again, and again, until the performance is no longer possible. She begins by meeting the shadow, that dark, inconvenient part of her psyche where all her repressed truths live. The rage she swallowed, the sexuality she disowned, the brilliance she hid behind modesty. She was told these were too much, so she buried them, but they never left. They became symptoms, patterns, loneliness, an ache without a name. But the shadow isn't your enemy, it is your lost language. It is the part of you that got cut away so you could belong, and now it wants to return. Then comes the anima, the sacred feminine core. Not a gender role, not softness, but soul. The chaos of intuition, the creativity that doesn't ask permission, the knowing that can't be proven, but is never wrong. This is not the polished feminine the world accepts. It's the primordial one the world fears. You felt her before. In the moments you knew something was off, before you could explain it. When you stayed too long in a space your body had already left. When your art, your writing, your feeling scared you with its depth. That was her. Not loud, but undeniable. And what about the collective unconscious? Jung showed us that we are not born blank. We arrive full, carrying stories that began before we were ever named. The myths, archetypes, and inherited roles of what a woman should be, obedient, soft, grateful to be chosen. You didn't choose these roles, but you've lived them. And now, your soul is done. That's what makes this moment sacred. You are not here to rebel. You are here to remember. You were not born to be tolerated. You were born to be felt. And when a woman reclaims her psyche, she stops negotiating her existence. She becomes the embodiment of something ancient and necessary. True power isn't domination, it's integration. When the shadow returns home, when the anima breathes freely, when the inherited masks fall away, what's left is a woman who can't be replicated. Because she isn't performing, she's inhabiting. This process is not loud. It won't get you applause, but it will get you back. And that's what this is about. Not adding more to become worthy, but shedding what was never yours. Because the soul doesn't evolve by accumulation. it expands by subtraction. So if your spirit has grown tired of roles, if your intuition has grown louder than your fear, if your exhaustion isn't just physical but spiritual, you're ready. Ready to meet the 9 keys. Not steps, not strategies, but awakenings. Each one a door you once closed to be loved, now waiting to be opened by you. T1. The mirror of the shadow. You were taught to shine, but only in ways that made others comfortable. You learned early. Silence is rewarded. Anger is punished. Vulnerability is misread. So you swallowed your rage, softened your brilliance, smiled through your boundaries. And then one day, you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She was tired. Not just in body, but in being. Jung called this the shadow. Not your darkness, but your buried truth. The parts of you the world labeled too much, too loud, too sensitive, too wild, too knowing. But here's the truth the world won't tell you. Your shadow is not a flaw. It's a fragment of your original wholeness. When a woman turns toward her shadow, she doesn't become dangerous. She becomes undeniable. You stop apologizing for your intuition. You stop explaining your no. You stop shrinking your voice to be allowed in rooms that can't hold your truth. This shift doesn't require noise. It begins in stillness. In the moment you say, I will no longer exile myself to be accepted. Let that land. T2. The power of the hidden flame. Somewhere along the way, you stopped trusting your own signal. Your body knew, but you overrode it. Your dreams whispered, but you called them impractical. Your inner voice said leave, rest, create, run, but you waited for permission, one that never came. What burned inside of you was not anger. It was flame, sacred, undeniable, your life force, and you were taught to hide it. Because a woman who knows her fire is a woman who can't be controlled. Jung called this feminine energy the anima. It's the creative chaos that births not just art, but insight. It's not linear, not logical, not provable. It's intuition that speaks in symbol and sensation. And it is not weak. It is your compass. When you reconnect with the anima, you no longer perform aliveness. You radiate it. You no longer negotiate your knowing. You trust it. You no longer wait for confirmation. You are the confirmation. There is a woman you were before you forgot your fire. And she is not gone. She is waiting. You do not need to get louder. You just need to stop dimming. If something here is stirring a memory in you or reminding you of your own truth, leave a comment below. This isn't just content, it's a conversation. T3. The silence that breaks spells. You were told your softness was your strength, but only when it made others feel safe. So you practiced silence, bit your tongue, smoothed your truth with kindness. And in doing so, you became a spellbound version of yourself. Present but not alive, visible but unseen. Jung said the psyche speaks in symbols, and silence, when used to suppress, becomes a symbol of shame. But silence can also be sacred when it's chosen, when it's rooted, when it says, I no longer explain myself to be believed. There's a moment in a woman's life when she stops defending her reality. She knows what she felt. She knows what she saw. She doesn't need evidence to validate what her body already confirmed. This is not arrogance, it is clarity. And clarity is an energy shift. People feel it before they understand it. They pause, they listen. Because you no longer speak to be liked, you speak to be clear. This silence is not the absence of voice. It is the end of self-abandonment. It is what breaks the spell of invisibility. And when that spell breaks, you don't become louder. You become unmistakable. T4. The threshold of the unlived life. There's a version of you left behind. Not because she was wrong, but because the world didn't know what to do with her. She was wild-eyed and intuitive. She dreamed too loudly. She danced with no choreography. She asked too many questions that made people uncomfortable. So you folded her up and placed her somewhere inside you, and called it growing up, and called it being realistic, and called it maturity. But that unlived life never disappeared. It became a haunting, a longing, a whisper beneath your routines, asking, is this all? Jung believed that what we do not live out consciously, we live out unconsciously, through symptoms, projections, and longing. That unexplored part of you doesn't go away. It waits, and at a certain point you can no longer ignore her. The job that drains you, the relationship where you shrink, the goals that no longer feed your spirit, that's not failure, that's a signal. The self calling you home. This key isn't about abandoning your life, it's about resurrecting the parts of it that were never given breath. The woman you left behind is not a fantasy, she's a map, and now she's handing you the compass. Your unlived life is not a regret, it's a doorway, and it's still open. T5. The wisdom of the wound. You've been told your strength lies in your ability to rise, to move on, to forgive, to smile through your scars. But there is a different kind of power, the kind that doesn't perform resilience but honors what it cost you to survive. Jung taught us that wounds are portals, not just pain to be endured, but symbols of where your soul has been stretched. The feminine wound, the one inflicted by abandonment, betrayal, dismissal, or violation, does not disappear when ignored. It deepens, it quiets your joy, it clouds your choices, it attracts familiar pain in different clothing. But when a woman turns toward the wound with presence, without shame, without bypassing, she finds something the world never gave her. Dignity. Not the dignity of appearance, but of embodiment. The wound becomes wisdom. The ache becomes direction. The scar becomes a mirror, showing you not just what hurt, but what matters. You are not here to be unscarred. You are here to be sacred, and that includes your ache. There is no shame in your healing. There is only gold in the places you dared to look. T6. The rebellion of enough. You've spent your life measuring yourself, your value, your voice, your beauty, your effort. You learned to overgive, to over-explain, to overcompensate for your very existence. And still, you feared being too much, or not enough. What if I told you the most radical thing you could do was stop trying? Not because you've given up, but because you've remembered something holy. You were never meant to earn your worth. Jung saw the trap of the persona, the social mask we wear to be accepted. And for many women, that mask looks like likability. Perfection. Pleasantness at the cost of presence. But your soul didn't come here to be palatable. It came here to be whole. This key is not a performance. It's a pause. It's the moment you exhale and say, I do not need to prove anything today. When a woman embodies enough, she moves differently. She speaks without rushing. She rests without guilt. She walks into a room without shrinking. Not because she believes she's better, but because she's no longer pretending she's less. This is not confidence. This is clarity. And clarity is a kind of rebellion. The rebellion of no longer asking to exist. The rebellion of no longer explaining your value. You are not here to be more, you are here to be revealed. Key 7. The art of sacred boundaries. You've been told that boundaries push people away, that they are walls, cold, harsh, unfeminine. So you let your yes mean maybe. You let your no mean silence. You let your energy be siphoned day after day by people who never learned to hold their own weight. And you called it kindness. You called it compassion. You called it love. But it wasn't love. Not for them, and certainly not for you. Jung said the self is sacred territory, and what is sacred must be protected. Boundaries are not walls. They are altars. They say, this is where I end and where I begin. This is what I honor. This is what I will no longer trade for crumbs. A woman with boundaries doesn't harden. She clarifies. She doesn't need to raise her voice. Her energy does the speaking. People may call you selfish, but what they mean is, you're no longer available for my comfort at your expense. Let them feel it. That discomfort is not your burden. It's their awakening. Every time you honor your no, you're saying yes to something deeper. Your clarity, your peace, your life force. Because true love, the kind that liberates rather than drains, is built on the foundation of self-respect. And that begins with the sacred sentence, no more. Key 8. The voice beneath the noise. There is a voice inside you that never raises its volume. It doesn't argue, it doesn't rush, it doesn't compete. But it knows. It knew the first time you felt that ache in your gut. It knew when the relationship was beautiful on the outside but quietly suffocating. It knew when your smile became a disguise. It knew long before you allowed yourself to listen. That voice, your intuition, is not mystical. It's ancestral. It's primal. It's been passed down through every woman who had to feel her way through a world that denied her logic. Jung believed in the wisdom of the unconscious. He taught that it speaks in dreams, instincts, and symbols. And women, especially, carry this language in their bones. But you were told to prove. To wait for evidence. To gather facts that validated what you already knew. And in the meantime, you lost time. You lost energy. You lost pieces of yourself. This key is not about learning intuition, it's about remembering it. When you stop drowning it in overthinking, when you stop outsourcing your choices, when you let that quiet knowing lead, something shifts. You no longer wait for clarity. You are clarity. This doesn't make your life easier. It makes your life yours. Because when a woman listens to the voice beneath the noise, she stops explaining her truth. She starts embodying it. Key 9. The return to the unforgettable self. You've been everything the world asked you to be. Polished, productive, polite, and still you wonder why it doesn't feel like you. Why your reflection feels distant. Why, despite all your achievements, there's still an ache. Here's the truth. The woman you were before you became pleasing, she never left. She went into hiding. Not to disappear, but to wait. She waited until you were done performing, done perfecting, done trading your essence for approval. And now, she's stirring. She's not angry. She's patient. But she's also clear. You can't carry her in the mask anymore. One must go. Jung believed the most important task of a lifetime is to become who we truly are. Not who we were taught to be. Not who we were rewarded for being, but who we were before the forgetting. The unforgettable woman is not built. She is remembered. She rises not from effort, but from alignment. Her presence doesn't shout, it resonates. Her power isn't loud, it's felt. She doesn't chase, she chooses. She doesn't dominate, she inhabits. And here's the final truth. You don't become her, you return to her. Not through striving, but through shedding. Not through fixing, but through feeling. You were always the fire. You were always the depth. You were always the mirror and the mystery. You don't need to do more. You need to remember more. And now, you have. If the keys reveal what was hidden, the traps show you what keeps it buried. Because the most dangerous cages are the ones you don't see. The ones you've been taught to call normal. And you've lived in them. Not because you are weak, but because you were loyal. Loyal to survival. Loyal to being loved. Loyal to a world that taught you to be half so you wouldn't scare anyone away with your wholeness. These traps are not just habits. They are ancient spells, passed down through lineages, cultures, and wounds. And now, you are the one waking up inside them. You were told to be soft at the cost of being true. To be flexible at the cost of having a spine. To be generous at the cost of depletion. You called it empathy, but it was erasure. People-pleasing as survival. You didn't start by betraying yourself. You started by learning that safety came when others were pleased, when your emotions didn't inconvenience, when your no turned into a nervous laugh, when your needs shrank behind your smile. Jung called this the formation of the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. But over time, the mask doesn't just hide you, it becomes you. And somewhere along the way, you started to feel like a stranger to yourself, performing instead of living, predicting others' moods instead of feeling your own, smiling with your mouth while your body whispered, "Get out." That's not a life, that's a performance, and you are done performing. Oversharing to prove worth. There's a version of you that believes, if I just explain myself well enough, they'll understand me, respect me, stay. So you open your soul to people who haven't earned a glimpse. You bleed into conversations that can't hold your truth. You give everything. Attention, tenderness, detail, hoping someone will finally mirror your worth back to you. But here's the truth you already know. Not everyone deserves your story. Especially not those who don't know how to hold it. Your vulnerability is sacred. But when it becomes a transaction for connection, it stops being intimacy and starts being leakage. You don't need to be fully known by everyone. You need to be fully respected by yourself, shrinking to be chosen. There are rooms you've walked into where you immediately began to dim. Not because you weren't powerful, but because you were. And something in you still believed your light made others uncomfortable. So you got smaller, quieter. You became easier to love, but only by abandoning your wholeness. Here's what no one told you. You can't be unforgettable while begging to be tolerated. You can't own your presence while tiptoeing around other people's egos. And you certainly can't attract truth while hiding yours. There's nothing romantic about disappearing. It doesn't make you magnetic. It makes you misaligned. Let yourself take up the space you were born for, not through noise, but through truth. Seeking emotional safety in men who fear their own feelings. You've tried to be safe, to be the calm in the storm. to prove you're not like the others, to be enough for someone emotionally unavailable to themselves. And in doing so, you betrayed your own emotional ecosystem. You overfunctioned. You rationalized red flags. You called your own intuition crazy. But what if you stopped making homes in men who haven't even entered their own? Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So many women confuse fate with familiar pain. And now you see the difference. Because when you no longer need someone else's stability to feel safe, you stop attracting chaos in a charming disguise. These traps were never about weakness. They were your strategies for survival. But you're no longer surviving. You're remembering. You don't need to be more. You need to be unhidden. You don't need to prove your value. You need to stop handing it over. And most of all, you don't need to become someone new. You need to come home to the woman you were before the world asked you to split in two. Your power was never in being pleasing. It was in being clear. And now, you are. You are not too much. You never were. The world simply taught you to measure your worth in teaspoons, to ration your radiance, to wrap your truth in gentleness so it wouldn't disturb the air around you. But look at you now, still here, still sensing, still sovereign. Even after all the ways they tried to make you doubt your knowing. What you called too sensitive was your inner radar. What you call too intense was your untamed clarity. What you call too emotional was your sacred intelligence speaking in the language of soul. And now you're no longer here to explain yourself. You're here to inhabit yourself. Because feminine power isn't performative. It's not about volume. It's not even visible. It's felt in the way you walk into a room without adjusting your energy, in the way you say no without offering a single excuse, in the way your silence carries more weight than another's shouting. This is not a reinvention. This is a return to the voice that was always there, to the woman who was never lost, only waiting, to the truth that cannot be taught, only remembered. If this helped you remember a piece of yourself, like this video, subscribe and share it with a woman who's ready to remember herself too. Not for the algorithm, but for the awakening. Because this is not content. This is a mirror. And as you leave this space, carry this with you. You don't become unforgettable. You remember that you always were. Not because you tried harder, but because you finally stopped hiding. Let the world feel you, not through force, but through the weight of your truth. Because a woman who is free on the inside cannot be ignored. And now we're home.